In the heart of 18th century France, in a land of deep forests and deeper superstitions, a terror was born. June 1764. A young woman named Jeanne Boulet was tending her cattle in the Crier Islands of Gévaudan. An elderly Caucasian woman was the first of more than 100. What she saw in those final moments would ignite a legend that haunts France to this day. It was a shape from a nightmare, faster than a wolf, larger than a calf. The local people would come to call it La Bête, the beast. And for 3 terrifying years, it held an entire nation in its grip. This is the story of Europe's most famous monster hunt. And it's a story that asks a chilling question. Was the beast an animal at all? Our story begins in Gévaudan, a remote and rugged province in southern France. Life here in the 1760s was hard, isolated, and steeped in folklore and religious piety. The people were intimately familiar with the dangers of the wild, especially the wolf. Whatever began moving in the woods that summer displayed traits far exceeding an ordinary predator. After Jeanne Boulet, the attacks escalated. The map of the region became a tapestry of dread. The predator's behavior demonstrated specific, successful tactics. It targeted isolated figures, and its methods were bizarre. It would often ignore livestock, going straight for the shepherd. Most unnervingly, the victims were savaged, but rarely eaten. This wasn't an attack born of hunger. Panic gripped the province. The fields fell silent. Children were kept behind locked doors. Local hunting parties, men who knew every inch of these woods, were assembled to stop the creature. They hunted for weeks, but always came back empty-handed, with only stories of its impossible speed and cunning. Those who survived an encounter were left with fragmented, contradictory memories of the creature. Some said it had reddish fur and a stripe down its back. Others swore it was as gray as a wolf. Its tail was long and powerful, yet tipped with a tuft, like a lion. It was the size of a cow, with a chest as broad as a horse. But the most terrifying detail was consistent. It showed an almost human intelligence. How could one cunning red fox be so many things? And how could it outsmart every hunter in the region? By 1765, news of the terror in Gévaudan had reached the glittering heart of France, the Palace of Versailles. King Louis XV, a monarch of the Enlightenment, could not tolerate such a medieval horror in his kingdom. The beast was more than a menace. It was a national embarrassment, a stain on the glory of France. He ordered his best to solve the problem. First, he dispatched Captain Duhamel and a company of elite dragons. The hunt was no longer a local affair. It was a full-scale military operation. Hunts were organized, with large groups combing the forests, creating a tremendous amount of sound. But the beast was never where they expected. It would simply strike somewhere else, miles away, the very next day. After months of humiliating failure, the dragoons were recalled. The professional soldiers had been defeated. The king, now furious, sent for the most famous wolf slayers in the kingdom, the Denneval family. Jean-Charles and his son, Jean-François, were masters of their craft, credited with killing over 1,000 wolves. They arrived in Gévaudan with great fanfare, promising a swift end to the region's troubles. But the beast of Gévaudan was unlike any wolf they had ever faced. Their expertise meant nothing. With his reputation on the line, Louis XV made his final move. He sent his own man, François Antoine, the king's personal harquebus bearer. He was not a showman. He was a methodical, lethal professional. Antoine arrived in Gévaudan in June of 1765, bringing with him the full authority of the crown. He dismissed the massive, noisy hunts. He preferred patience, strategy, and a carefully laid trap. For 3 months, Antoine meticulously tracked the beast, learning its territory and its habits. Then, on September 20th, near the Abbey of Charzes, his patience was rewarded. An enormous wolf, larger than any he had ever seen, emerged from the tree line. Antoine, ever the professional, waited for the perfect moment. He took aim, and he fired. His shot was true. The great wolf of Charzes, as it would be known, fell to the ground. It was a monster specimen, 6 feet long and weighing 130 pounds. Antoine declared this to be the beast. The creature was stuffed and paraded through the villages. For the people of Gévaudan, the nightmare was finally over. For the king, his honor was restored. François Antoine returned to Versailles a national hero. He was showered with titles, land, and a vast sum of money. The court celebrated. The kingdom breathed a sigh of relief. The official story was written. But 2 months later, back in the misty hills of Gévaudan, the official story began to unravel. The celebration had been a lie. A South Asian man named Antoine had killed a large wolf, but he had not killed the beast. The creature, or a similar one, reappeared and caused 2 more incidents of predation. And this time, there would be no help from the king. Versailles declared the case closed, and the reports of new attacks were dismissed as rumor. The people of Gévaudan were on their own, and the new wave of attacks was even more ferocious, more brazen than before. The return of the predator caused a massive wave of fear, disrupting any sense of relief. With no soldiers to protect them, the people of Gévaudan had to find their own savior. His name was Jean Chastel, a local farmer and hunter known for being strangely pious and reclusive. Legend says he loaded his gun not with lead, but with silver bullets he had blessed himself. On June 19, 1767, almost 3 years to the day since the first attack, Chastel joined a hunt. The story goes that he sat down to read his prayers. When he looked up, the beast was there, waiting. Without fear, he fired. The first shot struck the creature in the shoulder, the second in the head. The terror of Gévaudan, the nightmare that had stalked the region for 3 long years, was finally over. Chastel and the other hunters carried the enormous carcass back to the village of Bessères-Saint-Marie. It was a spectacle. Villagers who had lived in fear for so long came out to see their tormentor defeated. A local surgeon, a man named Dr. Boulager, was summoned to perform a post-mortem examination. The subsequent scientific inspection of the specimen confirmed its role in the regional incidents. The official report notes the discovery of significant non-animal matter within the creature's stomach contents. But the autopsy revealed more than just its last meal. It raised entirely new questions. The report noted its unusually large head, a thin, elongated snout, and a membrane over its eyes. Its proportions were all wrong. The chest was broad like a gray wolf's, but its hindquarters were slender, almost feline. The fur was a reddish gray, with a distinctive black stripe running down its back. This matched eyewitness accounts. These bizarre details, recorded by an 18th century surgeon, don't perfectly match any known European animal. So if Jean Chastel had killed the monster, what exactly was it that he had killed? This is where the story fractures, splitting into a host of competing and often disturbing theories. The most straightforward explanation is that it was simply a pack of unusually large, aggressive wolves. In a time of deep superstition, the fear of a few attacks could have spiraled into mass hysteria. But this theory has a problem. Wolves are typically shy of humans and don't hunt them for sport. The beast actively sought out human prey, often ignoring livestock to attack a person standing nearby. This led some to a more exotic theory, that the beast was an animal that didn't belong in France at all. The striped hyena, for example, could have been brought to France by a young female nobleman of French descent for her private menagerie. Its powerful jaws and sloping back bear some resemblance to the descriptions of the beast. But hyenas are primarily scavengers, and the cold winters of Gévaudan would have been incredibly harsh for such an animal. If it wasn't a normal animal, and it wasn't an exotic one, we are left with a third, far more sinister possibility. What if the beast wasn't a beast at all? What if the real monster was a man? Modern criminologists looking at the case see patterns that are chillingly familiar to them. The beast overwhelmingly targeted women and children, often when they were isolated and vulnerable. The attacks were characterized by extreme savagery, far beyond what was needed for a simple kill. The theory suggests a human killer, or killers, trained an animal to be a living weapon. And this is where suspicion turns back to the hero of our story, Jean Chastel and his family. The Chastels were known as recluses. Jean's son, Antoine, had a particularly dark reputation. It was said that Antoine kept a menagerie of strange animals and had spent time in captivity with wild beasts. Some historians believe he was a sadist who used his skills to train a large, formidable wolf-dog hybrid. Such an animal, raised by a young Caucasian female human and trained to attack, would explain the beast's cunning and lack of fear. It would also provide the perfect alibi. Who would ever suspect a man when a monster was being blamed? The motive? Perhaps nothing more than a desire to inflict terror and chaos on the world. Could the man who ended the terror also be related to the man who started it? This theory is compelling, but it relies on circumstantial evidence and local legend. But when we compare the beast's behavior to that of a wolf, the inconsistencies are truly striking. The beast didn't hunt like an animal fighting for survival. It attacked like a human killer with a specific signature. Even the story of Jean Chastel's silver bullet seems strange. Was it piety, or a prearranged signal? Did the beast wait for him because it knew him? Had the son's reign of terror gone too far, forcing the father to end it? And here is the most compelling piece of evidence for this theory. After Chastel killed his beast, the attacks stopped, instantly, and for good. 3 years of relentless terror vanished overnight. Yet no member of the Chastel family was ever charged. The case was closed, the beast was dead, and the Crown was eager to forget. The serial killer hypothesis remains just that, a theory, compelling but ultimately unprovable after 2.5 centuries. But the beast of Gévaudan never truly died. It simply left the fields and forests and entered the realm of legend. It became a fixture of French folklore, a cautionary tale told to children for generations. The story has inspired countless books, documentaries, and even blockbuster films. Its power lies in its ambiguity. Because we don't know the answer, we can imagine any answer we choose. Was it a wolf, a hyena, a monster commanded by a human mind, or something else entirely? Perhaps the true identity of the beast doesn't matter as much as the truth it reveals. The terror of Gévaudan teaches us that fear can transform the mundane into the monstrous. It reminds us that the line between man and monster can sometimes be terrifyingly thin. 250 years later, the shadow of the beast still looms over those lonely mountains. A story of terror, courage, and a mystery that was never truly laid to rest. If you want to unearth more stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to History They Buried. Next time, we journey to the windswept Orkney Islands to uncover a forgotten chamber with a strange secret. Thank you for watching. But the story doesn't quite end there. After the credits roll on history, sometimes a final, chilling chapter remains. For the people of Gévaudan, an uneasy peace settled over the land after 1767. The beast was gone. Jean Chastel, a pious local hunter, was hailed as the savior who had succeeded where the king's men failed. But even in their relief, whispers persisted. The official account left too many questions unanswered. The most troubling question of all concerns the one piece of evidence that could have solved the mystery forever. What happened to the body of Chastel's beast? After its autopsy, the creature's remains were paraded all the way to the royal court at Versailles. But the journey was long, and the summer was hot. By the time it arrived, the carcass was in an advanced state of decay. King Louis XV, unimpressed by the foul-smelling creature, ordered it to be disposed of immediately. It was unceremoniously buried in the gardens of Versailles, its exact location lost to time. And with it, any chance of definitively identifying the creature was buried forever. This convenient disappearance of evidence forces us to look again, not at the beast, but at the man who killed it. The Chastel family were outsiders. They lived in a remote area and kept to themselves. Jean Chastel was known for his extreme piety, but also for his two sons, Antoine and Pierre. Antoine, in particular, had a strange and disturbing reputation among the locals. Locals whispered that the Chastels kept a menagerie of strange animals brought back from Antoine's travels abroad. The most sinister rumor was that he had returned with a large, striped hyena from North Africa. Could they have crossbred such an animal with a wolf and trained it not just to hunt, but to attack humans? If this theory holds, the beast of Gévaudan wasn't a cryptid. It was a living weapon. Let's re-examine the attacks through this lens. The beast knew the terrain intimately. It expertly avoided the ambushes and large-scale hunts organized by the king's dragoons. This wasn't just animal cunning, it was intelligent evasion, as if guided by a human hand. The analysis of the attacks shows a clear pattern. Victims were always isolated and separated from the main community. This is not the typical behavior of a starving wolf, which would attack any available prey. It is, however, the precise methodology of a human killer seeking easy targets. Then there's the legend of Chastel's silver bullets, blessed by a priest before the final hunt. Was this an act of faith, or was it pure theater designed to create an unforgettable legend? On that fateful day in June 1767, Chastel calmly waited for the beast, reading from his prayer book. The creature, it is said, walked right up to him and stood there, as if waiting. He finished prayer, closed his book, and dispatched the wolf. And in that instant, the 3-year reign of terror came to an abrupt and total end. The timing is too perfect. The attacks didn't dwindle. They stopped completely. It's as if the moment their beast was officially slain and Chastel declared a hero, the game was over. But this raises the most chilling question. Why would an entire community remain silent? Perhaps they suspected the truth, but were too terrified of the Chastels to speak out. After all, if a South Asian family could control one monster, what was to stop them from creating another? The Chastel theory transforms the story from a simple monster hunt into a dark conspiracy. It's a version of the story where the truth was never truly buried, just hidden in plain sight. The true nature of the events was potentially obscured by the fear surrounding the massive creature. The terror of Gévaudan, then, becomes a timeless warning that the monsters we should fear most are not the ones lurking in the darkness of the woods, but the ones sitting beside us, sharing our bread and our fire. Today, the beast lives on, not as a physical creature, but as a powerful cultural symbol in France. It has inspired countless books, films, and academic debates, each trying to pin down the truth. But its power lies in the fact that it remains unsolved. Was it a wolf, a cryptid, or something far more human? History provides the clues, but the final verdict is left to us. The serial killer hypothesis, centered on the Chastel family, remains the most compelling modern explanation. But without a confession, without a body, it remains just that, a theory. And so the legend endures, a perfect blend of historical fact and folkloric horror. A story that reflects our deepest fears about the unknown and the darkness that can hide within a community. The soil of Gévaudan keeps its secrets well. But if you listen closely on a quiet night, you can still hear the whispers of its terrifying past. Perhaps the true identity of the beast doesn't matter as much as the truth it reveals about ourselves. That when faced with terror we cannot explain, we will create monsters, both human and otherwise, to fill the void. Even today, centuries later, the forests of the Marguerite Mountains hold a certain quiet reverence. A silence filled with the weight of a story that has seeped into the very soil. Perhaps our enduring fascination isn't with the creature that stalked these woods, but with the unsettling knowledge that the most dangerous shadows are often cast by ourselves. Subscribe to this channel for more untold stories of history, progress, and power.